So guys, we'll get into it basically because what we're looking for today is to just make sure that obviously you guys understand the benefits of the different types of cardio. I think that cardio is one of them things where people always assume that doing more working harder is better. For me, it just depends. It depends on what you need to do at that time. Where I see this done wrong all the time is that the lower intensity cardios are probably for a lot of you, if you're not used to doing cardio, you do them too low. If you're used to doing cardio, you do them too high and you skip that zone completely. That zone, the aerobic sort of system, if you will, is for me probably the most important part of all of your training. The most important part of all of it because it's going to have a direct influence on how you feel day to day. It's going to have a direct influence on how well you recover from all of your workouts, from your strength sessions all the way through to your higher intensity cardios. And usually for most people, it's really easy to develop, really important to put in, but people just, we sort of got dragged into this high intensity training zone a couple of years ago, I think, with a lot more Tabatas and a lot more really sort of top end wingate type work. And which is like 30 seconds all out and then you rest for a good few minutes and then 30 seconds all out again and rest for a good few minutes. Guys, it's absolutely use to having them included, but there's a time and a place for when you do that type of training. And if you're constantly just caning the high intensity cardio, it depends. If you're an endurance athlete, then there might be a reason to do that, but you'd already have a really well developed aerobic system. So, whether we're talking about fat loss here, whether we're talking about muscle gain, whether we're talking about just generally feeling better, mixing your cardio methods and making sure that you understand which one's going to work for you right now is going to be really important.
As well, just
workouts that we've put into the third phase of the plan, but they're available for all of you, and I'll just explain them. Yeah, sorry, Jay, go on.
Yeah, so we've got to think as well, guys, that sometimes when we are talking about cardio and we say you and we and you don't, is that there's so much stuff out there that will confuse you. There's so many sort of articles, there's so many people talk to you about different things, different ways. What we've got to do is look at the facts and look at you as an individual. I get this a lot, and Josh does as well. When we speak about like people that we've trained at football clubs, etc., they don't necessarily understand it very well. Therefore, the advice that they give, like a footballer, for example, might play in the Premier League, but he doesn't necessarily know how you should be doing your cardio, etc. That's Archie when you pass me, sorry. So yeah, so let's try and just not look at this as like individual. You will have individual questions. And that's why tonight needs to be the most interactive webinar that we've done. So I want you to just sort of, as we're going through this, drop questions and comments because we do really have to start to pull it to you. So yeah, let us get on with it. All right.
Absolutely. And guys, I've just realised as well, there is a slide missing on this one, but I will talk you through it. It's just a heart rate monitoring slide. So we'll probably start with that actually, just because I'll talk you into it. So what we're going to be going through though is basically the difference between different conditioning strategies, why it's important to see that. And when I say conditioning, sorry, that means cardio for you guys. I suppose that if I'm going to be picky and I'm talking about conditioning versus cardio training, when I talk about cardio training, I'm just talking about the actual cardiorespiratory response use of heart and lungs. When I talk about conditioning, there's a bit more to it. It's how you pace yourself throughout the movement, how well you're moving throughout that movement. So I'm going to talk about conditioning because, to be honest, that is the thing that's important for everybody watching this. It's not just the actual heart and lungs work. It's not just the physiological changes. It's also being able to actually stick to that movement. Whether we're doing a live video, a live class, and you've got burpees in there and squat jumps, maintaining your quality of movement as we get to them high heart rates is so important. That's why I sort of, in my head, I see this conditioning side. That's what we'll talk about when it comes to cardio. Heart rate monitoring, again, I'll explain that. We're going to really cover the difference between your aerobic type sessions and your anaerobic type sessions, which is your lower intensity and your higher intensity. Just why we do it, how to put it in. And again, we'll go through some examples. What sessions are in this phase, and then any questions that you've got that come up at all throughout this, please just drop them in, because again, this session, think of this, be dead selfish as you're watching this. Think of this as me talking directly to you in terms of coming up with strategies that are going to work for you this week, next week, going forward. And to be honest, all the way through any fitness journey that you've got, whatever your goal, whether it's to lean out, whether it's to get fitter, get stronger, there is some sort of cardio and conditioning strategy that's going to sit alongside that, that we need to be aware of. Just because I've missed it on the actual slides, the heart rate monitoring. Guys, for me, I would absolutely put heart rate monitoring in if you can, if you've got access to it. We use MyZone, obviously, and the simplicity of MyZone, that it comes up with different colours for the zones and things, is great. If you use Garmin, Polar, anything like that, fantastic. I actually use I've got an Apple Watch, but I mainly use my Whoop band for training and for recovery and things. Loads of different ways to do it. It's just, if you've got something to monitor your heart rate, that will be massively beneficial. But a couple of things to be aware of. One is that not all zones for people are the same. So we have predictor maximums that are usually inbuilt into these systems. So your predictor maximum, let's go old school and go to 220 minus your age. A lot of places still use that on their calculations. That's not going to be perfect for you. So if your max heart rate is different to what is calculated just by one of these sort of set calculations, you could be way out, and that would then in turn mean that you're 80 to 90% zone, 70 to 80% zone, 60 to 70% are way out.
Great point there. Just let me jump in. Last week I had someone, actually, Danny T, you'll be all right with this, because last week when we was actually discussing it, but it's not fair because Danny is obviously a lot younger than where Wayne is, and Wayne's obviously a lot older, so he has to work harder to get there, and all that, by the way, it's not true. It's a real guess. Like Josh says, you can't just because someone's a certain age doesn't mean that their heart rate goes there. For example, I'm 32, but my heart rate could go to 209. It did in probably the last time I did cardio. Other people can get their heart rate higher. Age or fitness sometimes isn't actually the only factor. There's a lot of other things can be going on that can impact heart rate. Until you start to try to truly work through your zones and understand you and your body, then we will not know that. We can get as far into it as we need to, but please don't, we need to start to understand you as individuals. Don't just go off what MyRun, MyZone, whoever else it is has said, because like I said, if that was the case, half of my clients would be dead because they've gone 10, 20 beats over the max heart rate, and half of them aren't working hard enough because their heart rate's too low for it to be giving the right thing. So, no, you shouldn't feel bad, and that's what I mean. It should be, Rick just put, should I feel bad? Then no, absolutely not. But maybe we need to reset your things once we do the max test, which when we get back into the gym, Josh, that's something else that's coming in, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we're going to do is, sorry, I'm just trying to pull the actual chat box up. I've just seen it now. One of the things that we're going to do is make sure that, it's something that if you've been with us for a long time, you'll be used to, the fitness testing and things. Not done as much of it recently, but we certainly will be putting in some different levels of fitness testing, and we can do all sorts of tests. This conditioning side, we can look at max heart rate, we can look at speed at VO2 max. One that we used to use all the time, Jeremy, and still do occasionally, the Cooper run. That's going to be something that we are bringing back in a big way. So guys, you can look forward to that, because it just gives such good metrics, gives us so much of a good indication of what we need.
I think a lot of people that's been with us have sort of seen bits going on, but we're making official. And first 2 weeks for some of you guys when we're back open up.
I'm just saying in the chat box, Nick, this session isn't actually based on you and all the questions that you have. To be honest, everyone probably does have and will have questions about cardio as soon as they get into it, as soon as they get into this next phase as well, because that's why we're doing this video, is to explain that. Now, I suppose the flip side of this, the other point on heart rate monitoring, is that if your zones are a little bit out, or we've sort of mentioned this, I suppose, but if your zones are a little bit out, it's going to be inaccurate all the way through. But it could work both ways. So you could feel like your heart rate system, especially something like MyZone, can be way off. You can do fairly low intensity work and it'll give you loads of points and say that you're burning loads of calories. But really, if that's not individualized to you, if you've not done your max heart rate testing and things, we don't know. I wouldn't do a max heart rate test necessarily with everyone straight away. And the flip side is that obviously some of you might find that you can't get into maximum zones.
Yeah, Josh, we have some of our fitter clients actually, like when we first got my zone, we're like, oh, it's not right for me, because some of the fitter ones were saying to me they could only get into red zone when they was running, for example, but not any other times. Well, that don't mean that you can't get into it. It just means you're not necessarily as efficient at it as well. You know, there's so many things that what I'm trying to say is that there's so many things that's going to influence this. So many different individuals. Everyone on this call now, there is not one answer for cardio training. What we can discuss though, Josh, is some ways that we can actually do it, can't we? Let's get into the next.
Hang on, because again, I'm just making a really key point. Guys, when I mention movement efficiency, we talk about conditioning and things, and I mention movement. If you can't do that movement, if you struggle to do burpees, for example, in terms of getting in and out of the position, they might not take you to your max heart rate, and this is really key. Certain movements, if you're quite efficient with that movement, you'll be able to work fast enough and flow it well enough to get up to a max heart rate. If not, if it's a bit of an awkward movement and there's a lot of coordination going on, you just won't be able to do that movement at a high enough intensity to get your heart rate to a maximum. The other point on that is that seated exercises, your heart rate should, in theory, always be lower. Maximum will be a little bit lower than it is on a full body standing exercise. So for example, being on the bike, a couple of reasons to this, but being on a bike, it's more limited muscle groups and you're in a different body position versus running, where it's more muscle groups and you're in a full body position. There will be differences. So if you are going detailed, and we're not going to talk about this today, but if you're going detailed in terms of setting your heart rate zones for a specific type of training, for example, for cycling, make sure that you set it off that mode of exercise. Guys, that is everything that I wanted to cover from heart rate. Jamie, have you got anything else heart rate wise that you need to drop in?
Great webinar. Let's go. See ya.
Energy systems. Guys, when we're talking about training, talking about cardio, this is all you're talking about. So there's not two ways to look at this. This is everything. This is your cardio work. Now, there's other things to consider in terms of that movement. There's psychological factors and things. But when you're talking about how fit you are or what fuels you're using during that training session, this is what you're talking about. So we've got realistically 3 to consider. 4 that we're going to sort of mention now, but 2 are the same. We've got the aerobic system, which the reason that I've put this twice is that the aerobic system in general, with your sort of high levels of fat oxidation and things, that's what you're all using now while you sat watching this. Then the first sort of exercise type intensity, I suppose, that you'll have. The first one that we're talking about, especially if you're going to be heart rate tracking and things to monitor your exercise, is aerobic glycolysis. This is using carbohydrate and fat, but mainly carbohydrates throughout your low intensity cardio, low intensity work. You will produce a little bit of lactate, but that'll be sometimes, but that'll be dealt with without building up in your system. So anything up to that sort of threshold pace is going to be this bottom end system. Really important. I know that this sounds a bit sciencey. I'll get into it in a second.
Yeah, it does sound sciencey, but it is pretty simple if we slow it down a little bit. Just think. I know it sounds like it's I know it sounds like it is sciencey, and I know some of you watching are like, what is aerobic glycolysis? But there's a reason why it's important to know it, and you need to bear with us, because some of the questions that we have on this it is basically understood on this slide, isn't it, Josh? If you understand this slide, you understand about why it's different.
This is everything, guys.
And it is simple enough. Just bear with us. Just give us like 5 minutes to explain and ask any questions if it's too far.
Basically, aerobic glycolysis using the aerobic system and glycogen. I mean, and it's pretty much as simple as that. And you know, we can see this somewhere on the arrow. It'll be probably around around this point down here in terms of sort of really fatty based exercise, I suppose, if I'm taking it to extremes. I know this only says 10 minutes, it could really say 10 hours. But basically, this is something, aerobic glycolysis, that your body will be able to continue to do long term. You will build up fatigue, but your recovery demands aren't as high, certainly not per unit of time, so within a normal training session. The next one up, anaerobic glycolysis, still using carbs as a predominant fuel source, but this time you're starting to build up lactate as well. So you're starting to build up these metabolic byproducts. This is, if we want to sort of give a distance to the last two, in fact, we'll do that in a second. The final one, anaerobic alactic ATP-PC system, that's where you're using creatine phosphate as your main, it's sort of your stored energy in your body without really producing any, or producing some really quick. So that's sort of, if we want to give it distances or times, this bottom one might be up to about 10 seconds. This middle one, you're talking probably 30 to 90 seconds. And then this one, anything above that. That's at maximum intensities. So when we're training, what we have to think about is each one of these is a different energy pathway and different adaptations in your body. This is the end of the science of it now. So basically, as long as you can understand that, your marathons will be this one, and potentially into this one a little bit. Your 400-meter sprints will be this middle one, and your max effort sprints will be this top end one. Mega important, because if you're training for fat loss.
When we say marathon, Josh, marathon time, guys, not expecting you all to do it.
Yeah. Just, but either way, I mean, it's the point. I suppose the point stands. But guys, what I mean, the important point is that at these max intensity, really short ones, you're building up, you're demanding a lot of recovery from your body, and you're not really using that much. Certainly no stored energy, certainly not fatty acids or anything like that. And you're not really creating much of an energy deficit either. But the recovery demands, the stress on your system, the stress on the nervous system, all the way through these sort of two zones, realistically, can be absolutely massive. So from here upwards, now that's why we've split the workouts that we'll talk about today into ones that are more performance focused and ones that are more base level fitness and health focused. So aerobic or anaerobic workouts in reality. When I'm talking about anaerobic as well, what we've got to understand about this is that all of these systems are working now, continuously. It's just how much percent is coming from each one. So they're all working at all times. That's where there's a lot of grey area in terms of the transition between, because obviously, if we're saying this is 90 seconds, this is 10 seconds, well, what happens at 50 seconds? It's obviously somewhere in between. And the way that drops off, we could show you, but we won't go into that. It'll be too complex. So basically what we're talking about, really simple, is that when we are doing cardio training, when we're doing conditioning, we are trying to train the energy system that we need to train. If we're wanting a better ability of your body to utilize fat, a better cardiac output, stronger heart and things like that, then in reality, dependent on where you're at, you might get a hell of a lot more benefit working at the bottom end, working at the lower intensities, because that is the adaptations that they're going to do. And the frequency that you'll be able to do them with will be much higher. We'll go into that now. So guys, aerobic training, basically, the photo there is dead simple. It's that this is a simplified version of what happens to glycogen within the aerobic system. So glycogen broken down into glucose. There's some energy created there. It then becomes pyruvic acid, drops into Krebs cycles, loads more energy. This pyruvic acid bit, you guys don't really need to know at all. But if you work too hard, this hasn't got time to go into this oxygen utilization, fat utilization system. If you work too hard, this shuts off into lactate. If it shuts off into lactate, you're working a completely different energy system. So realistically, there are massive benefits to keeping stuff a little bit lower intensity for most of you. Now, this type of training is your fat loss zone. This is where you're focused on fat loss for your training, where you're focused on your body's ability, not necessarily breaking fats down and getting it and using it at the time, but your body's ability to utilize fats and mitochondria in your muscle cells and things like that. So from now, I'll keep it dead simple. Jamie, you can hold me to it.
I think like it sounds. I know it sounds complex, but it really isn't, guys. The complexity is that you what we're trying to say is that this is why when we talk about cardio and we talk about what is it, and you all say, well, it's to get your heart rate increased. Well, it is, but there's a lot of risks when we do just what we think is a hard workout, which actually I do mention in that email that I wrote tonight. What are you doing what for? Just because something's not as enjoyable, not as sweaty, not as hard working, it just like strength, there is different types of training for different things that we do. We have all these things. If we do too much, and we can really be really impacting what you think you're getting from that session, and vice versa. If you do too little, what you think you're getting from that session, you might not be. You might be wasting a load of energy and a load of time in the wrong zone. You might be doing something that's really taxing, really tough, really hard on your body that you might have been better going for a walk with, and the opposite way around. You might be doing something that you think's great because it's a walk and it's in your fat burning zone, when in reality you might not be giving it enough to be making bigger changes or bigger changes.
Absolutely. And I think that it's really important to make the point that this aerobic training is not movement. So it's not your steps in a day and things like that. Aerobic training is trying to target these adaptations. It's your fat loss zone, but it needs to be high enough, not too high, but high enough intensity to work this. And for most people, we sort of skip that. We'll either move a lot or we'll train really hard. And if we do that, then, well, you've got all these byproducts, but a lot of the adaptations that realistically your body wants and your body will work far better off, we just sort of skip, and we put a hell of a lot of stress, a hell of a lot of recovery demands on our system that we just don't need to. Look at some of the benefits of this. It's low to moderate intensity, yes, but it doesn't need a lot of recovery, which means that you can do a hell of a lot of it. One thing that I would say is that for this, you want to spend a long time doing it. So you want to spend at least 30 minutes on these sessions. If you're not doing at least 30 minutes on these sessions, yeah, there can be other targets, focuses, but if this is your focus for that training session, at least 30 minutes, ideally somewhere 45 to 60 minutes.
And this is where that, the diary sheet that we printed out last week for people that says training CV, that's why there's a box for every day, because there might maybe some type on one day, some type on another, but that's why we sort of don't have it just grouped as like do this 3 times a week, because we can train or aerobic energy system every day anyway, can't we, Josh? And some
pretty much. I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on, it's always going to depend on individuals. But for most of you guys, this sort of training you can do quite a lot. You can certainly do more than the other end, where people get it wrong. We spoke a couple of weeks ago about recovery. If you recovered from this, you can train it again. If you're not recovered, the benefits of training it again. Of course, you can go and do the same session again. I see this all the time. Some of you might be watching this telling me, Josh, I do high intensity training every single day. Well, if you do high intensity training every single day, then there's no way, physiologically you are not going to be recovering from that training session, which means that you're not getting adaptations from that training, which means that you're leaving, a hell of a lot on the table. You might get some adaptations, but you're not going to be maxing it out. Yeah. So one really important point on this, and probably the most important, it's on the next slide, it's not mentioned on this one, but we don't really need a fueling strategy for this, because this is using stored energy, and we're not trying to absolutely blitz the glycogen out of our muscles by doing this. Your body should be able to keep up with this. Your body should be able to, continuously, up to about 90 minutes at least, be able to just produce this energy fairly comfortably. Yeah. What that means is that we don't need any specific fueling strategies. We don't need to add carbs to our diet to maximize the benefits of this. If we don't need to add carbs to our diet to maximize the benefits of this, then from a diet perspective, from a fat loss perspective, there's some massive benefits here. Low recovery, high frequency, can spend a long time doing it. We're not needing to fuel it with any other foods. For me, that jumps out as this is a really good strategy to use if I'm trying to lose body fat. Also, you want this system developed anyway before you go into your higher intensity stuff. If this isn't developed before going into your higher intensity stuff, then you're going to be sort of not getting anywhere near as much out of those sessions as you can do. I think that the only big question on this one is, can you cope with the movement? So say you put running in and you run at a pace that you can manage from a aerobic system point of view, but it might still be a lot on your knees, a lot on your ankles, a lot on your hips, especially if you're carrying more weight than you'd like. So make sure that you're considering the actual movement itself for this one. The next one, anaerobic development. Let's look at this in terms of, this stuff is performance focused. So if you've got a fat loss goal, I'd be definitely tempted to be focused on the other side, certainly first. Even if you've got a long-term performance goal, if you've not done the aerobic stuff, I'd spend at least a couple of weeks really focusing on aerobic development before you spend time coming into this. Simply because you're not going to get the most out of this sort of training unless you've got a good solid aerobic system. And we can talk about tests, we can talk about standards where people should be and things, but to be honest, that would be an individual conversation. Now, there's longer recovery needed from these sessions. Typically, they're going to be a little bit shorter, and you're certainly going to be getting a little bit more source from them, certainly going to be needing a bit more recovery. Now, again, if you're particularly fit and you're well developed, you've got a good aerobic system, you might be able to do these quite a bit as well. But again, it's going to depend person to person, the generalizations.
Yeah. Just let me make a point on this though as well, is that just because we said focus on the other one for fat loss doesn't mean, and this is really where tonight's webinar is really, really key, is that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing some of this type of training if you want to improve your fitness level. Do you get that? Because one might be more focused on fat loss, and this is focused on performance. So doing one would be okay, but you might not necessarily get any fitter. Therefore, your body might not be better at dealing with that in its system. Therefore, it might not be burning calories, blah, blah, blah. So what we might want to do, or what you should definitely be looking at, is how can I plan my week to include bits of this? What is anaerobic development for you? You know, how would that look for you? Would it be interval training? Would it be HIIT training? Would it be some short, faster, you know, whatever? How did these pair up with what you're currently doing? And are you considering, when you go for a run, for example, that you're not just about, and that we have this, don't we, Josh? We a lot of the runners, even the not professional, but you know, the proper runners that we have, train always at the same heart rate, in the same comfort zone, in the same place, trying to improve running. And that's not the most optimum way for you to get fitter, faster, stronger whilst you run or walk or whatever piece of cardio you're doing. It will be. So yeah, sorry mate. So yeah, so we've got to consider that, making sure that you think about the different types of cardio. We're not saying just do one, we're saying it may be worthwhile you picking what you need to do on what day, what's going to best suit your program, and what's going to best suit your goals as a whole.
Yeah, 100%, because we've got to factor in that for most of you, you're going to be doing strength training alongside this. If you're doing strength training alongside this, then obviously that's going to take up some of your energy requirements, some of your recovery capacity as well. Key points on this, I suppose, is that you will be, if you're wanting to maximize these sessions from a performance standpoint, you're going to need to consider fueling. There's no point, or there is a point, but what most of you wouldn't be doing would be going mega low carb or doing these when you're in a really depleted state and trying to do this anaerobic development, because the fuel that your body's trying to use, it's one of the days where you've not got it. So whether that's meal timing that you need to change, your diet on certain days that you need to change, but be aware that to get the most from a fitness perspective out of these, you want to make sure that you're fueling these workouts. Flip side, and I'm just sort of looking at the bottom of it now in terms of the SEB principles, specific adaptations to impose demands. Your body is going to adapt to the stimulus that you give it. So what we need to do with this, the other side, the aerobic stuff, it's generally aerobic development sort of ticks quite a few boxes. On this, there are a few different levels. We can either be threshold pace, where you're sort of coping with that lactate build-up and how, you know, it's still going to have a long recovery demand, but it's going to be a completely different session to VO2 max intervals, which is going to be completely different to things even higher intensities that might be sort of very short max speed type work. So just important to consider. this will have a much higher recovery demand, which means that you've got to consider your training program as a whole. You've got to look at everything. Some of you will be using a combination of both. Usually, I would absolutely encourage you that if you've not got a good base of cardio, spend a couple of weeks developing that base in the aerobic system, and then you can start to mix your methods. So guys, going into some of the sessions that we've got, low intensity, steady state, or cardiac output. If you're going into phase 3, you'll see this session. And this is one of your aerobic training sessions. This is one of your ones that's realistically not, and I absolutely won't say beginner's level either, because this is still something appropriate for people to do at most levels of fitness, definitely. Your speed relative to what's steady state for you and what's low intensity for you will obviously change, will be different. But if we want to go off heart rate monitoring, which I think is a really good tool, or we can go off RPE, it's somewhere sort of 60-70% realistically, maybe a little bit higher. If you're particularly well trained, the thing is that this 60-70% will creep up a little bit. So you will go up to just a couple of percent below your threshold, and that'll be your low intensity steady state. So dependent on where this fits, it's about the full training program. But these should be fairly easy, fairly comfortable sessions. But again, when people talk about fasted cardio, can I do fasted cardio? This sort of thing, absolutely. Your body should not require a fueling strategy for this. So can you do this fasted? Yeah, you should be absolutely fine. If you've got a half decent aerobic system anyway, your body should cope with this. Now, if you've not done that before, and you've not really done any cardio, you might want to sort of make sure that you've got at least some sort of backup for if you are trying to do that, because you might get a little bit of a blood sugar slump. But that's probably going to be more due to the fact that you're low intensity. You just don't have enough control of that yet. Your body's just really struggling to deal with that. So again, the type of work that you do is going to impact the recovery needs. So running is probably going to be a little bit higher than something like cycling, for example. There's a couple of reasons for that. We won't go into it. But the level of fitness is obviously going to impact your recovery needs. Like we've said, this is an aerobic method. So this should be appropriate for, certainly if you're looking for mainly fat loss adaptations, or you're wanting to focus on your strength training and you're just trying to find that extra bit to put in, and you've not done much cardio recently, this sort of thing is definitely a good option. Where you've got to be careful is that if you're saying, right, I'm going to run for 30 or 45 minutes because that's a low intensity steady state cardio session, guys, it still has to be fairly comfortable. You can't just run as fast as you can for 30 minutes or as fast as you can for 45 minutes. Talk about that in a second. That's more like your threshold work. Now, people talk to me about this one and they said, Josh, that type of training just completely bores me. And I get that. I understand that. This is one thing that you can do. If you're in the gym, you can do it in sort of a circuit of 15 minutes on one machine, 15 minutes something else, 15 minutes something else. If you enjoy getting out and running or enjoy getting out and cycling, might be really good things to use. If not, you might want to shift it more towards like aerobic intervals or something.
Just back on that other one, Josh, 1 sec, sorry. So obviously, guys, one of the things with this, especially when we talk about like the type of training and what it does and everything else, is that I think that's one of the biggest problems when people start with something such as running, is that you think you're running for fat loss, yet you can only run for 30 minutes because you're at 9 out of 10 after 5 or 6 minutes. And what I used to say to people that wanted to start running is, do you feel 6 or 7 out of 10? You know, if we know that we can only train at 9 or 10 out of 10 for an hour, for example, or not even that, not an hour, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever. If we know that when we get to 9, we've got like 5 minutes to go, there's no point us trying to go at 9 from 15 minutes in an hour-long run. You know, we need to be at 6 or 7 because we know we can keep 6 or 7 up. We know we can do it comfortably. We know we're not getting that in. And that's what a lot of people, when you start doing something such as running and you just go out and just try and do it, and I'm guilty of it, everyone's guilty of it, because you want to get that time. You want to just do it quicker than last time. You want to just do it a bit better. But if that means that you're trying harder each time and you're going out of your normal training zone, then sometimes pulling it back and not actually doing too much is actually a good a good thing. I always say to my clients, look at don't go out when you're on that run. Don't go out of your yellow zone, or when you're on that run, don't go out of 6, 7 out of 10. Don't go out of 8. Don't go above 8 out of 10. I say quite a lot to people, just to keep them able to do the activity for longer without having, like Josh says, a negative impact on your training, especially like the rest of the day. People saying, oh yeah, but I couldn't do legs the day after because I had sore legs from my run. Well, what you're going to get more benefit from for your session, that run or that's where we talk about what's more important. Right, sorry, Josh.
Yeah, and I mean, if I just shift it back to this one, if we're going too fast, then we're not giving this chance to convert. So we are building up much more metabolites. We're making it. Your body's using different systems. If there are different energy systems, the intensity of work that you do, which we know that there are, hopefully you guys have all seen that now so far. The intensity of work that you do is going to directly that's going to determine which energy system you're using. Your body's not going to decide because you sort of say in your head, oh, I want to do this workout, I want to work this system. The actual work that you do is going to determine that. And because the work that you do determines that, it means that you need to be a little bit picky and a little bit more conscious sometimes of the pacing strategies that you use and of holding yourself back. If you've got specific adaptations that you want to make, which are more working this baseline and not having negative effects on your recovery and things, guys, holding yourself back will still have some massive, massive benefits. But again, it's just being in the right zone. And if you're not used to it, again, I think that heart rate monitoring is great for that. But if you find that boring, mind-numbingly boring, which some of you, I know, text me and say, Josh, I just don't want to do that. That's why I work hard all the time. Well, then we can look at a couple of ways to do it. You can pick a zone. So you could say, right, I'm going to go from 50 to 85% and jog nice and steady until your heart rate gets to 85%. If you're not monitoring heart rate, you can just go off breathing rate. You can just pick a couple of things. Right. When I'm struggling to say odd words, like string a couple of words together, then I know that my heart rate is going to be somewhere around there. So as soon as I get to that, maybe go back into a walk. This is a really good option if you're trying to get into running as well. If you're not used to running, because this is just simply a run walk. It'll stop you running too fast, hopefully. The biggest mistake that people make is that they set off running way, way too fast. So it's way beyond what the body can cope with. So the heart rate spikes straight away and then they have to walk and it takes a while. If you run really steady, 3 to 5 minutes, building your heart rate up to that 85% and then walk and just let it come down to 50, 60. It's a really good way to get into it. But again, you can do that at any fitness level and it can be more of an aerobic interval session. The difference is going to be the pace that you run at or the pace that you cycle at or the pace that you row at. So we can still mix these type of sessions up. It's just basically when you work in the aerobic system, don't go beyond your sort of threshold. Don't go beyond that sort of top end of where you want it to be. That's going to be individual. I mean, I've said 8.
And look, we sound like probably, which is not like us, Josh, but I think that we sound like we're sort of saying, we sort of sound like we're sort of advising you that on the lower end of it. But what we've also got, which we'll get to soon, I'm sure, but this is an interval that's not maximal. This is not the maximal part, is it? This is like getting there, just using intervals, blocks of time. It could be, if you're more advanced, it could be a kilometre. It could be, run a kilometre at this. It could be, run 2 lampposts at this and then back one. There's all sorts of ways to do it. And if you need assistance with that, we can help, can't we, Josh, with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the basics of any of these methods, and these are just 2 examples of a million different combinations that we could put in, a million different things that you could use. The key thing is that with any of these is that you are keeping within that aerobic energy system predominantly. You're spending the vast majority of your time in that aerobic zone without putting too much recovery stress on your body. And again, to be honest, it's going to depend on you. If you're not used to doing a lot of a certain type of intensity on your training, I'd always say start with this, because this is realistically, this should be, you could use the higher energy systems and have a poor developed aerobic system, but you will always get more from getting a good amount of development on this. It'll only take a couple of weeks to do, and then you can move on. And that's what we'll talk about now. Moving on, going into threshold training. Where I think a lot of people get it wrong is that if you're not recovered for your training session and you're trying to do a difficult session, so you're trying to do your 5K as fast as you can, but then you do that 2 days after, 2 days after, 2 days after, 2 days after, your body's automatically going to be limiting how much adaptation it gets from that session. So now what I want you to realize is that where we're talking about lower intensity, that's the stuff that you get a lot of frequency. That's where you do it often. That's where you get a lot of volume. You can add that into most workout plans as a bit of extra work, and you don't necessarily need more food for it. When you're talking about anaerobic methods, now we're into proper conditioning methods. And to be honest, for me, most of the time when I see people do this, it's actually potentially that they are not working hard enough. Whether that's that they're not pushing themselves hard enough in the session, or whether that's that they're doing it too often to be able to actually tap into them energy systems, to be able to get the most out of the workout. So this is where we go into quality work and not quantity work. The last ones, the aerobic system, you can do a hell of a lot of, you don't really need to fuel. When we get to this is more the threshold stuff. So this is more 5K, run it as fast as you can. 10K, run it as fast as you can. Half marathon, run it as fast as you can. This is those sort of runs. And if you're used to endurance training, you'll definitely do this sort of thing quite often. You can still split this into intervals, and you can go just faster than you could say be doing 4 lots of 1 kilometer sprints at 10% above your 5K pace, or 5% above your 5K pace. You can do intervals like that, but I'm not really talking about that. Don't want to make it complex today. What I want to talk about is just that these threshold intervals, you basically want to sit somewhere around, pick a distance and treat it like a time trial. So we can go just above that pace and go a little bit shorter distance, or we can go a little bit further and just below. Or if we want to be fairly comfortable and just use it as a time on your feet type session, you can go a little bit slower than your race pace and get those specific distances. Really, really massive benefits to doing this if you are training for a specific distance or a specific task that you want to accomplish. If not, then in reality, this uses a hell of a lot of energy. It's really hard. It demands a hell of a lot of recovery. It demands a lot of fuel from your body. It's going to change your appetite. It's going to change your stress levels. So there's a lot of factors that influence it, but where this fits in, I see people use this far too much in terms of go out, run 5K, run 10K as fast as you can, and do that 3-4 times a week. Fine, but that's not going to be the optimum way to either strip body fat down or recomp your body, let's say strip body fat and, maintain muscle mass and things. And it's not going to be the optimum way to actually get faster. So what my question would be is, this is really hard training. It's really hard on your body, and there's going to be some negatives on your joints and things like that from doing this. Can you explain to us why you're putting this in so often? And if not, especially if you're trying to do something like building muscle.
I asked the question earlier. I asked the question earlier. Sorry, Josh. To the group before you came on, and I said, who's worked at absolute maximal. This is the real lead on the floor. You're going to feel like you're going to die. You're going to be sick. There's all sorts of things could happen, not all could happen in your body when you really sort of push those sort of higher end heart rates. When you're really trying to sort of get into those, it is different. I think some people maybe have been there before and get there before, but not trained in a way that is purposely putting you there and then taking you out, putting you there, then taking you out. I think there's a difference between a hard session and a training session on threshold training, isn't there? We sort of talk about, we have a difficult session that you feel like, maybe a boot camp, for example, may feel like you're going like in and out of that. Oh, that was a really difficult one. That was a difficult one. But what we're talking about is organising your diary and organising your training enough to know, oh, actually, this is what I'm doing for this amount of time. That's how hard I'll be working. Then I'll stop. Then I'll let myself recover. Then I'll do it again. Then I'll stop. Then I'll let myself recover a bit. Then I'll do it again. And you're doing that within a session. It's a completely different ball game, isn't it, than just going for that run, for example, or just doing that sort of, like I say, 8, 9 out of 10 stuff when you're really getting higher for a shorter period of time, especially as well.
Yeah, you can be, and with threshold training, it's really interesting, to be honest, because you can be just above, and if you miss sort of time this, if you will, if you overdo, and you're working above your threshold, say that you're wanting to train for an hour, say that you've got a half marathon to do, and you're just above your threshold by a few percent more than you'd like to be, when that fatigue kicks in, it's going to massively impact you because you work just a little bit too fast initially, and your body's just going to collapse. Because when we build fatigue, it's not that it's just really gradual all the way. It's that it's going to hit a point and fatigue is going to spike up. And when that happens, you're going to really lead to some collapse. However, when I'm saying threshold training, don't take this too literally. I'm using this to make a point today. But we can train above threshold, we can train just below threshold. And for some of you, this system will be exceptionally well developed. So if you are a runner, this is what I do see all the time in runners, is that this threshold system is really well developed. Most people can hang around the threshold for a really long time, and that's where they run, just faster for the 5Ks, but there won't be much difference in time for the 10Ks, and then not much difference in time for the half marathons. And then we might see a little bit of a difference when it comes to marathon, but again, not massive, because this system's really good. So what we're looking at is they've probably got the aerobic base, they've probably got the threshold, so then it's how do you push it further? How do you actually improve performance for that person? And again, guys, these methods realistically use the majority of time or to get fitter, they are to improve performance. We can use them on all different things for fun training, just for general fitness, or we can target it to run faster, to cycling to ride faster, to rowing to row faster. But again, the next level above, these are the ones that are genuinely sort of horrendous. And if you do these sessions properly, you are basically max intensity for a short block of time. But the difference is that if you're running at a set pace, even if it's as fast as you can, but for 30 minutes, your body's obviously limiting how fast you're going to go, because you maintain that for 30 minutes. You've got to be in a pattern where you're at that anaerobic threshold. So you're just not building up too much acidity in your body. You're just not, creating too much metabolic stress. And your body can sort of cope. It might feel horrendous, but it can sort of cope. And that's where pacing comes in, obviously. But what this can do is this can mean that you can work beyond that. You can really take yourself to a limit. And again, then you can get really out of your comfort zone. The thing is that if you've not got those base energy systems, your heart rate's going to spike really quickly. Your recovery is going to be pretty poor, and you're not going to get anywhere near enough out of these sort of sessions. If you are a good level of fitness, 4 minutes, basically absolute max intensity, pretty much working as hard as you can. You can do 8 minutes, you could do 12 minutes, or you could do potentially a little bit less. Putting in 4 minute active recovery. These VO2 max intervals, or from a conditioning cardio standpoint, should be your highest intensity method. These are your hardest cardio workouts, and then we can still keep going with conditioning, because then you go into speed sessions. But the thing is, your heart rate and that system, if you get beyond this and you go into 45 seconds as fast as I can, a 5 minute walk, it's obviously not going to be as good a cardio session, as good a session for your heart rate, for your cardiovascular system, as what the others are. Still benefits to it. It's just that that's out of the scope of what we're talking about today. So this one, and again, this is one on the app. If you are really looking to maximize performance in something, go and give this session a go. What I would say on this is that you probably want to be on a flat or an uphill if you're running, and you basically want to find pretty much a long straight path if you can. If you're doing this and you're going up and down hills, your heart rate's going to look all over the place. Having a treadmill is really good. Having a spin bike for these intervals can be really good as well. But again, just running outside is pretty difficult, because as you go downhill, your heart rate's going to drop, which means that yes, you might still be moving faster, but are you overloading this system? Possibly not. But again, highest intensity method. You should have the highest level of fitness before you start this. Again, if you don't, then it's just going to mean that this isn't really a necessary method for you to be getting the most out of at the minute. But it's really useful if you are wanting to build your fitness. It's a mega advanced method. So fairly short today in terms of this, but guys, I'm sure that you've got a lot of questions. I hope that you've got questions. because I've had questions this week coming from quite a lot of you. And what I want to know, what I want to understand is that you guys know where to put this in. You guys understand which methods you should be selecting and why. It's going to be based on your goals. But if you want clarification on that, just ask us now. Basic summary slide though, and then we'll sort of go into a bit of a discussion. Cardio is obviously not one size fits all. There's not one cardio session, and because I've done cardio there. It's what is that cardio session? Where does it fit on this spectrum? What adaptations are you looking to get out of it? How often do you need to do it? How well can you recover? What else is going on in your training program? What else is going on in your life? And it's just about looking at how you can best get the results that you want. If you want in fat loss, doing 3 60-minute sessions at a decent intensity that you can recover from might be more beneficial than 2 30-minute absolute all-out intensity sessions. It might even be more beneficial than 3 60-minute all-out intensity sessions because you can actually recover from the other workouts. So, you know, just sort of putting it into perspective there, that these things are individual, but again, it's not always more work the better. It's what are you trying to achieve with that workout? Why is it in there? And for a lot of the conversations that I've had, if it's in there to help just add this base level cardio, for me, I'd be working on probably the aerobic intervals. Keep it interesting, but control your sort of intensity. Where do live videos fit into this, like live workouts that you might do that we did for a week or two? It comes back down to how hard you work. So obviously, the best way to monitor it for me, best way to monitor your cardio response is going to be 2 things. It's going to be give a bit of a score afterwards, you know, rate how difficult the workout was on the app, but also track your heart rate. And then you know that you're hitting the target zones, because if you're in the wrong zone, you're getting the wrong adaptation. There's no 2 ways about it. Jamie, anything to sort of chuck in?
No, I think that it's pretty straightforward tonight. It's straightforward. I know it sounded complex at points, but I do think that we did all right there. It got very, very. The point is well and truly across. Look, what we say with cardio as well is that some of you do it for stress relief, some of you do it for fun, for a fun type of workout, and that's fine. But I do think still that sheet that we shared last week was so powerful for you to understand that, get your head around what you're doing on what day with cardio. Don't just leave cardio to chance. Don't just think that you can do a Joe Wicks workout, for example, one day and it be high intensity cardio. You know, it needs to be planned. It also needs to be structured. I'm not one for having this, you know, and that's one of the problems with live workouts. What you should be really trying to sort of think about is what type of session do you need yourself? You know, what's not in your program, what's missing, and that's why we don't just give live workouts and don't just say this is the program, because you know you could be going at it a complete wrong way. Just because something's fun and sweaty and that's good for me doesn't mean that it's going to give you the right result from what you want in that session. What we're saying is that of course that has to be part of your plan. Yes, of course it has to be in, but just put it in like having a beer would be. You know, you've got a plan. I'm going to do that day. That's what's going to be there. Same as what we do with strength. You know, don't think that just running hard every day is going to be the best way for a runner to train, for example, or the best way for someone wanting to improve cardio is going to be work through the zones, plan different types of training. It'll also keep it much more interesting for you. It'll also keep it much more challenging, much more enjoyable. You'll also get much better results from it. So, no, plan it. Plan cardio. Do not leave cardio to chance. Plan it. Plan when it's going to be, and you know, don't just use it as an exercise or a heart rate increase in sweat session. Plan it and try and. I know we sound like we say plan and think and this all the time, but it really is something that we do need to do. You have to plan when you're going to do what type of session, just like with strength, just like that session that you think is a little bit more boring than the next. You know what? If people say to me like, oh yeah, but walking's a bit more boring, Jimmy, I can't just stay in my green zone. Well, put a podcast on or something. Don't run to dance classics from the 90s and expect your body not to want to go a bit faster. You know, listen to some podcast, speak to your mum on phone, I don't know, whatever it is that you need to do in that hour. You know, there's other things that you can be doing to work in the different zones. Think about
I had a chat with someone a couple of weeks ago as well, and it was basically, you know, is this you're walking every day, or your walks covering the aerobic development side of things. So we had a look at the heart rate, and it just wasn't quite enough. It was still that movement zone. So again, just really important to be aware that movement and aerobic training, for me, realistically, they're different things, because you want to be at the top end of the aerobic system for the training, not just the bottom end where you just sort of sat moving around and things. The other thing, and I wasn't going to mention it because this is where things can get a little bit more complex, but Jamie, you brought it up. The higher intensity stuff, the anaerobic stuff, we can see as really dominant sympathetic drive. So if you're using your training as stress management, that should not really be the, to be honest, that shouldn't be the top end stuff. If it is the top end stuff, it's driving that sympathetic system up even higher, and it's going to impact recovery even more. If it's the aerobic side of things, it's probably, if anything, going to enhance your recovery rather than drive up the sympathetic system. It's probably going to enhance parasympathetic drive. So really important thing to consider is that if you just want to smash your training session every time you're stressed, chances are we definitely need to look at that, because if you're doing the really high intensity stuff all the time, there's something else going to be going on. I know that for most people, they're not going to get anywhere near maximum benefit from doing that. So,
all right,
cool, guys. Any questions? 10 seconds. Drop it into the chat if you have, or just raise your hand and we'll wait for you to ask. Hopefully that's covered everything. Jamie, I've not seen if we've had anything on Facebook as questions. I've seen there's been a lot of people on, but not seen any questions come through.
Great stuff, guys. That's great. Any questions, obviously, drop them in the comments later or on Kajabi tomorrow, or just send us messages. This will be specific to individuals, and you will need to make sure that you are thinking about it in your program yourself.
Guys, the 4 workouts that we've spoke about are in phase 3 of the home workout plan. So if that's the one that you're on, now you basically just fire me a message, tell me which ones you think which ones fit best for you based on your goals, or ask me and tell me your goals, and I'll tell you which ones to put in and when.
All right, guys.
Cheers.
Bro, thank you. See you then.
See you later.